She had mapped every exit before she allowed herself to breathe. That was how it worked now. New space, new crowd, new gathering full of wolves she did not know. First the exits, then the authority structure, then the scent geography of anyone who might be a problem. Only after all of that could she exhale and call herself safe. And safe was a word she used loosely these days, because safe mostly meant no one was looking at her, which mostly meant she had done her job correctly. The market at Thornheld had 3 usable exits from where Maeve's stall stood. She had walked all of them twice before setting up the first jar. She had noted which pack contingents controlled which sections of the row, mapped the social currents that would keep certain areas neutral, and identified the 2 guard posts that changed rotation at the same hour every morning. She had also, with the specific methodical focus she brought to work that mattered, mapped Gareth. She had known he would be here. The Ashford Pack's attendance at the Thornheld gathering was a matter of record, and Wren had checked the record before agreeing to come, because that was what 8 months of being packless had taught her. Check the record, know the terrain, remove surprises before they could become wounds. She had spent 2 days successfully maintaining the distance between his scent trail and hers. 2 days of small adjustments, route changes, timing her movements to the spaces his presence left empty. She was good at it. She had always been good at reading what was coming before it arrived. Which was why, on the 3rd morning, when the crowd from the eastern gate shifted without warning and compressed the market row into half its usual width, she had exactly 3 seconds to calculate, and 3 seconds was not enough. She came around the canopy merchant's cart and stopped. Gareth was 12 feet away, Lena beside him, her hand through his arm, both of them mid-conversation with a wolf from one of the northern packs. Neither of them had seen her yet. Gareth's face was angled away, and Lena's attention was on whoever was speaking, and in approximately 2 seconds, one of them was going to turn. Wren did not think. She moved. Left. The nearest body large enough was to her left, and she turned into it before she had properly assessed it, got her arms around a waist that was broader than she expected, pressed her face into fabric that smelled of pine and cold air, and the kind of authority that had become structural rather than performed, and held on. He went still. Not startled, not the flinch of someone caught off guard. He went still the way a wolf goes still, when something significant has registered before the conscious mind has caught up. The deep, complete stillness of an animal that has stopped in the middle of an action because something more important than the action has just happened. She counted. 1 breath. 2. She kept her face down and her scent pulled in and her body quiet against his. She felt his hands come up, slowly, with a deliberateness that told her the choice was being made, rather than impulse responding, and settle against her back, not grabbing, not pulling away. His palms rested there with a weight that felt like a decision. She read his scent because she could not help it, the way she could never help it, the automatic professional reflex of someone whose ability lived in her nose before it lived anywhere else. Pine, cold air, control that ran deep, structural, the kind built over years rather than managed in the moment. Under the control, warmth, real warmth, the kind that did not perform itself, the kind that existed whether or not anyone was present to witness it. And under that, running like a current below the other notes, something she filed immediately and did not examine. His wolf. Present, close to the surface, and not searching. She had been around searching wolves for 3 days, the restless undercurrent of unmated wolves at a gathering, the particular quality of wolves looking for something they could not name. She knew what that scent signature felt like. This was not it. This wolf had gone quiet in a way that was specific and sudden, and felt, in the split second she registered it, like arrival. She filed it. She counted 3 more breaths. She released him. She stepped back and looked up. He was tall. That had registered first and remained true. He stood a full head above the crowd, broad across the shoulders in the way of wolves who had been trained rather than just grown, dark hair falling across a forehead that matched the rest of him in its refusal to be decorative. His jaw was clean and strong. His eyes were gold, not amber, not the warm brown gold of most dominant wolves, but the specific deep gold of a wolf whose instincts were very close to the surface, even when the rest of him was perfectly controlled. Those eyes were fixed on her with an expression she could not immediately categorize, not irritation, not the calculating assessment of a dominant wolf taking stock of something packless that had touched him without permission. Something else. Something that looked, if she had been willing to examine it, like recognition. She was not willing to examine it. "I apologize," she said. Her voice came out even. "I needed to not be seen for a moment." "You succeeded." His voice was low and controlled. He was watching her with an attention that felt different from scrutiny. "Are you all right?" "Yes. Thank you for not making a scene." Something moved in his expression, the ghost of architecture that was not quite a smile. "Is that what you were worried about?" "Among other things." She turned and walked back toward Maeve's stall at the pace of someone with somewhere specific to be. She was almost back when she saw it. His right hand, visible for half a second as he turned back toward the crowd. A seal ring. Heavy, old, specific. The crossed wolf crest of Valemarch. The Alpha King's seal. She kept walking. She set down the jar she had been carrying and picked up another and began measuring without looking at her hands. She breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth, and thought about what she had just been given. The man whose chest she had pressed her face into was the Alpha King, who was not supposed to be at this gathering, and whose wolf had gone quiet in a way she had filed and was not examining. "You're measuring that wrong," Maeve said from behind her, not looking up. "I know," Wren said. She corrected the measure. Behind her, somewhere in the crowd, a king stood with his hands at his sides and his wolf sitting perfectly still inside his chest for the first time in 2 years. Flynn materialized at Soren's shoulder with the efficiency of someone who had decided the distance was no longer useful. "You're standing in the middle of the market," Flynn said. "I'm aware." "People are beginning to notice." "I'm aware of that too." Flynn studied his king's profile for a moment. In 11 years of service, he had catalogued every register of Soren's stillness. This was none of the ones he knew. "The compounding stall," Flynn said carefully. "Third row, eastern end. Maeve Corrigan's operation. Her assistant, Wren, no surname, joined her 4 months ago in the western reaches. Is listed as packless. No documentation on file." "She walked away from you at a controlled pace," Flynn continued, "which means she was making an effort to appear unaffected, which means she was affected." Soren finally turned his head. The gold of his eyes, which Flynn had watched grow steadily more closed over 12 years of kingship, had something in them that was not closed at all. "My wolf stopped," Soren said. It was not a declaration. It was a man saying aloud something he was still processing. "For 2 years it has been restless, and then she grabbed me in a crowd, and it stopped." Flynn was quiet for a moment. He had waited 11 years to hear something like this. He was not going to mishandle it. "What do you need?" Her name, who she was hiding from, and commission Maeve Corrigan for the remainder of the gathering. Castle rate, her assistant included. The medical stores were restocked 6 weeks ago. Flynn. Yes, Flynn said, in the tone he used when he was choosing not to say several things at once. "I'll see to it." Wren knew the commission was not a coincidence. She knew it the moment she read the crest on the wax seal, a plausible logistical reason, constructed in the right institutional language, arriving from the right authority. The shape of someone creating conditions without applying pressure. Someone who understood the difference between the two. She set the letter down. She thought about exits. Then she thought about the thing she had filed in the market, which was becoming more difficult not to examine the longer she did not examine it. She thought about the specific stillness of his wolf, the scent she had read in 5 seconds and tucked away under things that are not mine to want, which was the folder in the back of her internal scent map, where she had been storing inconvenient observations for 8 months. She set the letter down. "The silver is significant," she said. "It is," Maeve agreed. "We accept," Wren said. Maeve said nothing. The set of her shoulders said everything she was not saying. The castle at Thornheld was old in the way of places that had long since stopped trying to impress anyone. Wide corridors, high ceilings, stone that had absorbed several centuries of significant decisions. Wren mapped it in the first 2 hours. Exits, guard rotations, supply room access, service corridor timings. Doing it the way she did everything, without announcing it, woven into the ordinary movements of settling in. She noted the rhythms of the space, and she filed them, and she went to work. She also, over the first 2 days, mapped Soren. She did not decide to do this. It happened the way all scent mapping happened, through proximity and attention, and the automatic reflex she had never been able to fully turn off. He moved through the castle with the pattern of someone who had occupied it long enough that his roots had become architectural. The formal corridor in the morning, the map room in the late afternoon, the library before the evening meal, the garden after. She simply encountered his scent trail in the corridors she moved through, and her nose did what it always did, read it, file it. And what she filed was dominant alpha of significant rank, control that was structural, not performed, warmth underneath that was genuine, not displayed, and his wolf, which was not searching the way she had presumed it to be searching for 2 years, but had instead the quality of something that had found its bearing and was oriented. She filed all of this under things that are not mine to want, and kept working. On the second day, she saw Gareth. She had been careful. She had been mapping his movements and maintaining the geometry that kept her invisible. But on the second afternoon, she was already in the middle of the outer courtyard when he came through the eastern gate with 2 wolves from his pack, and there was nowhere to redirect without making the redirection visible. He saw her when she was 12 feet away, close enough to read clearly. His face did the thing she had known it would do, the flash of recognition, then the guilt. And beneath both of them, in the space where his scent reached her, the hollow ache of a wolf that had severed something the moon goddess had not designed it to sever. She felt it. She had spent 8 months feeling it from her own side. Reading it in him was different. He stopped. His companions kept moving. He stood there with his jaw working, and she could see him deciding between things to say and coming up empty on all of them. She gave him nothing to work with. She kept her face neutral and walked past him with the quality of someone who has already processed this and has nothing left to perform about it, which was mostly true. She rounded the corner and stood with her back against the stone wall for 30 seconds. She breathed. She placed the hollow ache carefully back in its folder and closed it and went back to work. Lena she saw twice, both times at a distance, both times with Gareth, beautiful, high-ranking, poised, the right bloodlines, the right presentation. Also perceptive, both times her attention moved to Gareth's face a half-second after it should have, the way a person monitors something they have decided not to ask about directly. Wren felt nothing toward her. Lena had made a choice, and Gareth had made a choice, and the choices had found each other, and that was the shape of it. What she felt was simpler than hostility. She felt done. On the evening of the second day, Maeve said without looking up, "He came by while you were at the supply room. The king," Maeve continued, "asked about your training, your ability. I told him you were the most precisely gifted scent reader I had worked with in 40 years, that it went beyond training into something biological." A pause. I told him nothing else. He also asked if I thought you were all right. What did you tell him? That you were managing, which is accurate, and that managing and all right are not the same thing. She set down a bundle of herbs. He's coming to the compounding room tomorrow, late afternoon. I told him you'd be here. You told him. I have opinions about certain situations, Maeve said. I exercise them occasionally. You're welcome. He came the following afternoon, when Maeve was resting, and Wren was alone with a preparation she had been rebuilding from impure source material for 2 hours. She heard his footstep in the corridor, and knew before she looked up who it was, because she had been reading his scent trail for 2 days, and knew its quality, the way you come to know a voice you have heard repeatedly without deciding to memorize it. The court physician tells me the restorative you prepared yesterday was the best he has worked with in 4 years, Soren said from the doorway. Wren did not look up. The source material was good quality. The result reflects the source. He seemed to think it reflected more than that. He is being generous. He is not, actually. He is precise to a fault, and does not give assessments he does not mean. A pause. May I come in? She looked up then. He was in the doorway, in the same plain clothes he had worn in the market, with his hands relaxed at his sides, and his expression carrying the quality she had been cataloging for 2 days without letting herself name it. The controlled surface, the warmth underneath, and the wolf, close to the surface now, pushing slightly against the composure in a way she could read from across the room. She looked at it for 1 second and looked back at her work. "If you like," she said. He came in and took the position against the wall, not the chair, not the work table, the wall that left him at the edge of the space rather than in it. He looked at the preparation she was working on. "What's wrong with it?" She glanced at him. "You can read that?" "Not specifically, but you have been working on the same preparation for 2 hours, and your expression has not changed in the way it changes when work is going correctly." She filed this. The extraction temperature was too high on the source. The volatile compounds degraded before stabilization. I'm compensating, but the base is compromised. It will be adequate. It won't be what it should be. Does that bother you? Adequate and what it should be are not the same thing. He was quiet for a moment. No, he agreed. They're not. She worked and he watched, and the silence between them did not need to be filled. She had not experienced that particular quality of silence in 8 months. "You knew the commission was not a coincidence," he said. "Yes. You came anyway." The silver was significant, and I had reasons of my own for being here. She looked at him then, properly, for the first time, directly. She had been reading him in peripheral awareness for 2 days, and now she read him fully. Steady. That was the first word. Not the performed composure of a dominant alpha managing authority. The composure of someone who had been tested enough times that they no longer needed to perform anything in either direction. He simply was what he was. Underneath the steadiness, the warmth she had noted in the market, present and unannounced. Under that, the wolf, orienting toward her with a specificity she had been filing for 2 days under things that are not mine to want, and she was running out of room in that folder. She looked away. She set down her tools. 8 months ago, she said, my fated mate rejected me. She said it the way she had learned to say it. Information, not wound. At the bonding ceremony, in front of everyone in the Ashford pack, he took a chosen mate within the month. He is at this gathering. His chosen mate is with him. I have been managing the geometry of that for 3 days. He said nothing. He waited, completely, without filling the space, without offering the reactions she had learned to brace for. I have been packless for 8 months, she continued. My ability, the scent reading, my pack's elder called it unnatural when I was a child. My mate's family called it a liability when I was considered as a match. The mate himself said it was the kind of thing that would always set me apart in ways that would reflect on him. She paused. He was not wrong that it sets me apart. He was wrong about what that meant. Soren said, yes, he was. 3 words, flat and certain, not a comfort. A man who had assessed a situation and was stating his conclusion. Something shifted in her chest, small and specific, and not unwelcome. What do you see, she said, when you look at yourself? He blinked. It was the first uncontrolled response she had seen from him. That is not a question I am often asked. I know. I am asking it. He was quiet for a long moment. A man who has been the Alpha King for 12 years and has made every decision for everyone else and has forgotten what it feels like to want something simply because he wants it. A pause. A wolf that has been searching for 2 years for something it could not name, that stopped searching 4 days ago in a market when someone grabbed me and held on and counted their breaths. The room was very quiet. She read his aura, every layer of it consistent with what he had said, not performed, simply true. She picked up her tools. I should finish this before the evening. Of course. He pushed off the wall. He started toward the door and stopped. Ren. She looked up. My wolf recognized something in the market. I am not asking you to respond to that. I prefer not to pretend things are not happening when they are, and that is something that is happening. What you do with it is entirely your own. A pause. I will say that I have been the Alpha King for 12 years, and I am very good at patience. He left. That evening, Maeve said, Well, don't, Ren said. And Maeve didn't. Ren lay awake that night with the garden window open and the smell of pine coming in. She lay with her scent map unfolded in her memory and looked at it honestly, for the first time, without the filter of things that are not mine to want. One section was more detailed than any other, more than Gareth, more than the exit routes, more than anyone else at the gathering. One scent trail, mapped with a precision that told her, if she was willing to look directly, exactly how much attention she had been paying without admitting she was paying it. She looked at it directly. She thought, I know what this is. I have known since the market. She thought about how it felt when she had released him and stepped back and looked at his face and found no calculation, no assessment of her worth relative to his, no performance of any kind, just present. Just, what are you? Just, are you all right? She thought, I am not done being careful. But careful and closed are not the same thing. She thought, adequate and what it should be are not the same thing. She let herself fall asleep to the smell of pine from the castle garden, which was his scent, which she had been breathing for 3 days and filing and not reading, and which she could now, if she let herself, read clearly. The following morning Gareth found her. He appeared in the East Wing corridor alone, with the specific quality of someone who has been rehearsing an approach and has chosen their moment. He looked thinner than she remembered. The circles under his eyes were new. His wolf was visible even in human form, pressing against his composure with the restlessness of something that had been asked to accept what it was not built to accept. Ren, he said. Gareth. Her voice was even. I want to explain, he said. There is nothing to explain. You made a calculation. You weighed the bond against what you wanted your future to look like, and I did not fit the shape of it. That is a coherent choice. I am not angry about it anymore. She looked at him directly. The anger went some time ago. What's left is a great deal of nothing, which is probably worse for you to hear, but is honestly more comfortable for me to feel. He was silent. She read his scent, guilt, regret, and underneath them, the hollow ache of the severed bond. I felt it break, he said quietly, when I took Lena. It took 3 months. I felt every day of it. I know. I felt my side of it too. A pause. How is it now? Quiet, most of the time. That is how it goes, she said. It becomes background noise, and then eventually you stop hearing it. He nodded slowly. I saw you with him, the king, the way he finds reasons to be where you are. He looked at her for a long moment. He is a good male. He does not take things lightly. He paused. I want you to know that I am glad. She looked at him, at the guilt and the genuine quality underneath it. Go back to Lena, she said. She chose you when she didn't have to. Take care of that. He exhaled. He nodded and turned and walked back toward the eastern courtyard, and Ren watched him go and felt the last bright thread of the old pain stretch and thin, not break, not yet, but close. That evening she found Soren in the library. She had gone looking for a reference text on scent compound chemistry and found a collection organized with a thoroughness that spoke of someone who had thought carefully about how information should be accessible. She was on the 2nd level, working through the cross-referencing logic when she heard him on the stairs. The indexing, she said, without turning around. Organized by compound family and application, not just plant name. That's not the standard system. It wasn't useful in the standard format. I reorganized it. When? 2 winters ago. A pause. I had time that needed filling. She understood what he meant and did not press it. He reached past her to catch the volume she had dislodged, and she smelled the familiar profile of him close. Pine and cold air and the deep, warm core and the wolf, present and oriented and still. She stepped back slightly. He looked at her. You spoke with him this morning. Gareth. How? Flynn mentioned it. He was not watching deliberately. He simply has eyes. Soren's voice was even. Are you all right? The question landed differently than questions usually did. Not the social reflex, but the genuine version, as if the answer mattered regardless of what it was. I think so, she said. More than I expected to be. He nodded. He held her gaze. I have been doing something, she said. For 3 days, with the scent map. I have been mapping you. more than the exits, more than anyone else at the gathering. I keep filing it under things I am not ready to look at, but I have been building it the way I build maps of things that matter, the kind of detail that means I have been paying attention without deciding to. He was very still. I know what that means, she said. I have known since the market. I am telling you because you said you prefer not to pretend things are not happening when they are. And this is something that is happening. He looked at her for a long moment, the gold of his eyes in the library light, fully present. I know, he said. I have known since the market, too. Then we both know. Yes. I am not ready to do anything with knowing yet. There is still something I am waiting to finish feeling about Gareth before I can put it down properly. She met his eyes. But I wanted you to know that I know, he said. That is enough. For now, that is more than enough. They were in the library together for another hour, separate and present in the comfortable silence that had become theirs, and when she finally left, he did not follow her, and she did not expect him to. She walked back through the castle corridors in the early dark, and she felt, in the section of her scent map where she had been filing things that are not mine to want, a door opening, not wide, just enough to admit some light. The fourth day had a different quality from the first three. She had looked at the map honestly and not looked away, and now the door was still open, and she was deciding what to do with that. Maeve watched her the way Maeve watched things she had opinions about, from the side, apparently focused on something else. Don't, Wren said. I haven't said a word, Maeve said. You are saying several things. Maeve set down the herb bundle. 8 months ago you came to me with 2 copper coins and a scent reading ability that was going to waste, detecting contraband for merchants who paid you less than you were worth. You had the specific quality of someone who had recently learned to exist as smaller than they actually are. She paused. You are not smaller than you actually are. You have been performing smaller for 8 months because the person the universe chose for you said you were too much. And if the person the universe chose for you said that, then perhaps you were. You are not too much. You are exactly the right amount. She picked up the herb bundle. I am saying this now because there is a man in this castle who has been watching you work for 4 days and has reached a conclusion he is very certain about. And I want you to know that conclusion is correct before you talk yourself out of it. Wren looked at her. That is all, Maeve said, and went back to sorting. Wren stood with this for a moment. She picked up the measure and went back to work. She said, Thank you. Maeve said nothing. She was excellent at that. It was Gareth who came to find her that afternoon. Maeve had sent him. Wren understood this the moment he appeared in the doorway. She could read the weight of someone who has finally committed to a conversation they have been building toward. Come in or don't, Wren said, but decide. He came in. I have been trying to find the right words since the bonding ceremony. I know. I don't think there are right words. There aren't. I was afraid of it, he said. The bond. I had a plan. What I needed to build, what kind of mate would serve that plan, and then the bond arrived, and it was you. And you did not fit the shape of the plan. And instead of examining whether the plan was wrong, I decided the bond was wrong. That is not an explanation. It is an accounting. I know the difference, she said. I have already forgiven you. Not for you, for me, because carrying it was expensive, and I needed the room for other things. She looked at him directly. What I want you to hear is this. You were wrong about me. Not wrong to choose your own path, Wrong about what I was, wrong about what my ability meant, and what it would have cost you to have me beside you. You chose to be afraid of something you didn't understand instead of choosing to understand it. That was the mistake. He was very still. You have a good mate, she said. Lena chose you, knowing you had a rejected bond somewhere behind you. That is a choice that deserves your full attention. Go home, Gareth. Build the life you planned. He nodded once and left. She listened to his footsteps diminish down the corridor. She breathed in and breathed out and felt the last thread go. Not painfully, the way a thread goes when the tension that has been holding it finally releases. Not a snap, just a loosening. She pressed her hand briefly to her chest and found it quiet. Not absent, but quiet in the way of things that have been set down properly rather than dropped. At the end of the day, Soren appeared in the corridor outside the compounding room. Not entering, simply present in the way he was present when he had something to say. She looked at him. He looked at her. "The garden," he said. She went. The castle garden in the early dark had the quality of spaces that have been tended for a very long time. The old stone wall, the beds laid out with the patient logic of someone who thought carefully about how things grow, the oak in the far corner that was too large to have been planted by anyone currently living. Soren was at the bench against the east wall, not pretending to read anything, simply looking at the sky with the quality he had in spaces where he was not required to perform being the king. She sat at the far end of the bench, closer than she had been maintaining. "I told him what I needed to tell him," she said. "I think he heard it. The bond is quiet now, what was left of it." She paused. "It feels like something finishing rather than something breaking, which is better than I expected." He nodded. He waited. "I have been carrying something alongside the rejected bond for 8 months, she said. The belief that being rejected by the person the moon goddess chose meant I was the kind of person who gets rejected, that there was something fundamental about what I was that could not be chosen. I know that is not a logical conclusion, but knowing a thing is illogical and not feeling it are different." "Yes," he said, "they are." She looked at him. He was giving her the same quality of attention he always gave, complete, without redirecting it back to himself. "I see a wolf that stopped searching," she said. "That is what I told you on the first day. What I did not tell you is what is underneath that. The specific quality of a wolf that stopped searching because something arrived that was right, and it knows the difference. I have mapped thousands of wolves. I know what searching looks like, and I know what found looks like, and I have known since the market which one yours is." He was very still. "I have also been mapping you with the same density and attention I give to things I do not want to lose," she said. "Since the first day. I called it professional habit. It is not professional habit." "No," he said quietly, "it isn't. I am telling you this because I said I would tell you when I was ready to look at the map honestly. I am looking at it honestly." He was quiet for a long time. 12 years ago, I became the Alpha King when my father died with no warning and left me a realm and a crown and responsibilities that required everything I had. I have been very good at the job. What I have not been good at is being a person rather than a position. Somewhere in the 12 years, I forgot what I wanted that was separate from what the kingdom needed. I forgot what it felt like to make a choice that was only mine. He looked at her. When my wolf went quiet in that market, the first thing I felt was not joy. It was relief, as if something that had been running very loudly for 2 years had stopped, and I could hear myself clearly for the first time. What I feel when I look at you is not need. It is recognition. There is a difference, and the difference matters to me. She read his aura while he said this. Every word of it was true. Tell me something, she said. Something that has nothing to do with the king. Something in his expression shifted, the controlled surface holding, but underneath it something less guarded. I reorganized that library because the original system drove me mad. Application matters. Compound relationships matter. The person who designed the original system had clearly never actually used it to solve a problem. I spent 3 months redesigning it. Flynn thought I was avoiding my advisors. Were you? Yes, but the library also genuinely needed reorganizing. A pause. I find things like that useful. Systems, things with internal logic that can be made more correct if you are willing to do the work. It is probably why I have always found you easier to be around than most people. She looked at him. You have a system, he said. You are not random. You are very precisely organized. Something moved in his expression. I find that genuinely restful. She thought about being told for years that the way she processed the world was too much, too strange, a liability. She thought about a man who had just used the word restful. The map has been better, she said, since I stopped trying to hold the exits at a higher priority than everything else. He understood what she meant. She could see him understanding it. Good, he said. They stayed in the garden until the light was fully gone and the stars were out over the castle wall, not doing anything in particular, which was something she had forgotten was possible. The 5th day was the final formal banquet. Gareth was at the Ashford Pack table, Lena beside him, their shoulders touching in the easy way of people who have been beside each other long enough to stop noticing it. He did not look toward the secondary seating. She read his scent from across the room and found it quieter than it had been, and beside it something simpler, the specific quality of someone who had put something down and was choosing, with full awareness, to leave it where it lay. She felt the last of the old bond release, not the thread she had released after the corridor conversation. That had been hers. This was his side, finally going quiet too. She felt it the way you feel a sound stop, not with hearing, with the absence of something that had been present for so long it had become ambient. She breathed in. She breathed out. She closed that section of the map. She looked at Soren. He was at the head of the great table in the full formal presentation of the Alpha King, the crown, the attire, 12 years of authority worn without effort because it had become natural. He was speaking with the Harwick Pack's Alpha, his attention on the conversation, his expression the controlled professional warmth of a man who was very good at his job. And across the full length of that crowded hall, in the middle of a sentence, his eyes came up and found hers, not searching. She had known they would not be searching. They went directly to her, the way eyes go to something they already know the location of. He looked at her for 3 seconds. She looked back. The hall between them was full of noise and people and the political choreography of a realm maintaining itself, and none of it was the most significant thing in the room. He looked back at his conversation. She looked at her food. She thought, I know exactly what that was. It was in the 3rd hour of the meal that Soren stood, The hall quieted in the way it quieted when he indicated he intended to speak, not commanded silence, but 12 years of authority had made the shift in his posture recognizable as a signal. He addressed the gathering's achievements efficiently and precisely. Then he said, "There is one further matter I wish to address before we close." The hall waited. The Scent Mapping Commission undertaken this gathering has demonstrated a capability that is significantly underutilized in the current structure of the Crown's services. The ability to read scent trails with the precision and analytical depth demonstrated over the past 4 days represents a distinct and documentable skill set. The Crown is formalizing this as a recognized specialist position, with full standing and protection under royal employ. He paused. Effective immediately. She was aware of the hall recalibrating, 100 wolves doing rapid arithmetic about what had prompted a king to make this announcement in front of every alliance partner at the gathering. She read Gareth's face and watched the specific quality of understanding move across it, the jaw that tightened and then released as he made himself accept what he was seeing. She noted all of it and set it aside, because the most significant thing in the room was the Alpha King, standing at the head of the great table and looking at her across its full length, with the specific quality of a man who has made a decision that is only his. Every wolf in that hall who was paying attention could see what they were looking at. Some of them were very much paying attention. She thought, 12 years of making decisions for everyone else, and he made this one for himself. She looked at her wine cup. The warmth in her chest was something she recognized, something she had not felt from a clean source in a very long time. Not the frantic urgency of a mate bond, not the desperate hope of wanting to be chosen, something quieter and more solid than both of those. After the banquet, she was moving through the dispersing crowd toward the east wing when she heard his footstep behind her. Unhurried, certain, she stopped walking. He came alongside her. "Flynn," he said, "has extensive opinions about the paperwork involved in what I declared tonight." I imagine he does. His final comment was that it was about time. She looked at the corridor wall. He is not wrong. He was standing close enough that she could read him clearly. The wolf, still. The warmth, present. The 12 years of duty lighter than it had been, as if something had been redistributed. "I want to ask you something," he said. "I know," she said. He turned to face her. She turned to face him. The corridor was almost empty, the gathering dispersing into its final evening. He said her name. Then, "I have been the Alpha King for 12 years, and I have made every decision for the kingdom, and the alliances, and the succession, and all the complicated machinery of a realm that did not ask me whether I wanted the job. I would like to make one for myself. I would like to make it now, plainly, without framing it as anything except what it is. I am asking you to stay, not in the commission, not in the employ of the crown, here, with me, as mine and I as yours, in whatever way that takes whatever time it takes to become." He looked at her without the controlled surface, just him, steady and warm and completely certain. "I am asking because you are extraordinary, and you have been performing ordinary for 8 months, and I would like that to stop. I am asking because my wolf has been still since the moment you touched me, and that has never happened before. I am asking because you told me that adequate and what it should be are not the same thing, and I find I agree, and I want something that is what it should be." She read his aura. She always read his aura. Steady, warm, true. Every layer of it consistent with what he had said. Just a man who had organized a library in his grief and made a commission appear from nowhere and sat in a garden telling her things that had nothing to do with the king, asking her in a corridor on the last evening of a gathering if she would stay. She looked at him for a long time. She thought about the scent map, about the section she had been building since the first day, the most detailed and most carefully rendered section of the entire map. She thought about the door she had opened slightly 4 days ago and had been leaving open since. She thought about what Maeve had said. "You are not smaller than you actually are." She said, "Yes." He exhaled. She heard it, the specific quality of a breath released after being held for a very long time. Not from the last few minutes, but from somewhere in the 12 years of doing everything for everyone else, and not this, not once, just this. She heard it, and it told her more than the declaration had. He put his hand on her face, his palm against her cheek, with the specific care he brought to everything, the same care he had brought to the hands against her back in the market, the same care he brought to the library and the commission and the garden. She covered his hand with hers. "I should tell you that I have no idea what I am doing," he said. "That makes 2 of us. I find that reassuring. So do I." He lowered his forehead to hers. They stood in the corridor in the quiet of the emptied castle, with the specific warmth of 2 people who had arrived somewhere, not with drama or declaration, but with the accumulated weight of 4 days of honest attention. And it felt right in the specific way of things that have been true for a while, and are finally being allowed to be true out loud. He kissed her once, carefully. She kissed him back. It was unhurried and specific, and tasted like pine and cold air and 12 years of patience reaching its end. When they parted, he kept his forehead against hers for a moment. "Flynn," he said eventually, "is going to be unbearable about this." He said it was about time. He will find ways to say that repeatedly. He won't be wrong. Soren laughed. It was the first time she had heard him laugh fully, without the architecture of a social response, just him finding something genuinely funny, warm and specific, and she filed it immediately under "Things I Want to Keep Hearing." They walked back through the castle together, not performing anything, just walking, and his hand found hers without looking, and she let it. The following morning the gathering broke. Gareth found her in the outer courtyard before his pack departed. Lena was nearby, her attention elsewhere. He walked toward Wren with the specific quality of someone who has one remaining thing to say and intends to say it, and then let it be done. He stopped in front of her. "I saw what he did last night. The declaration." A pause. "I want you to know that I am glad. Not in a complicated way, just, I am glad." She looked at him, at the guilt quieter now, the hollow ache quieter still. "I know you are. I can read it." He started to turn. "Gareth," she said. He looked back. "Take care of yourself. Not for the plan. For you." Something in his face shifted, the specific shift of someone being seen more clearly than they expected. He nodded. And this time it was something smaller and more genuine. And then he walked back to Lena, who took his arm, and they left. Wren watched them go. She felt the last of it close, not painfully, simply with the specific quality of a chapter ending that has run its course. She pressed her hand briefly to her chest. Nothing there now except her own steady heartbeat. She turned back to the supply cases. Soren was at the top of the castle steps, not performing waiting, simply there, watching her with the specific gold of his eyes that she had been reading for 4 days and intended to keep reading. She walked toward him. The courtyard was busy around them, departing packs, castle staff resuming their rhythms, Flynn somewhere nearby making notes with the expression of a man exercising extensive opinions through administrative efficiency. She walked through all of it and climbed the steps. "Flynn has begun the paperwork," he said. "Significant quantities. He is also using his best handwriting, which means he is pleased." She looked at him, at the 12 years in his face, not as weight anymore, but as something integrated, part of what he was. "I don't know how to not be packless," she said. "I have been packless for 8 months, and it has become the shape of how I understand myself. The exits, the maps, You don't become pack by forgetting what you were," he said. "You become pack by choosing where you want to be." She looked at the open door of the castle behind him. She looked at the courtyard she had been mapping since the first morning, and the section of her scent map that she had built around him without planning to and would not be dismantling. She was done being efficient at being alone. He held his hand out. Not a demand, the same deliberate offer it had always been, his palm open, leaving the decision entirely to her. She took it. His hand closed around hers with the warmth she had been reading for 4 days and had finally stopped pretending not to read. And she felt it settle, not the dramatic completion of a forced bond, not the urgent pulling of something that needed to be met, just the specific rightness of something that had been true for a while and was now being lived in. She looked at the open door. "Show me the map room," she said. "You said you have maps of all 11 territories. I have scent trail data from the eastern routes that would be useful for the border assessment. I want to see where it fits." Something in his expression, the ghost of architecture that was not quite a smile, had become, over 4 days, something that was entirely a smile. "Yes," he said. "Come in." They went inside. 4 months later, Wren was in the East Wing corridor teaching 2 of the castle's younger guards how to read a layered scent trail. Soren had formalized it into a training program without telling her first. She had found out from Flynn, who had delivered the signed authorization with his best handwriting and an expression of studied neutrality that said several things he had chosen not to say out loud. She had not been asked. She had been told after. This was how things worked around here, which she had spent 3 weeks deciding whether to be annoyed by. She had decided not to be annoyed by it. "The top note is what you read first," she was saying. "But the top note is usually the least informative. What you want is the base note, the thing that has been here longest and has had time to settle into the stone." She crouched slightly. "What do you smell right now?" The taller guard said, "Pine. That is the top note. Now breathe through it. What is underneath?" The guard breathed carefully. Something older, stone dust, and earth, wet stone. "Someone came through here last night in wolf form from the direction of the east garden. The mud on their paws is from the section near the wall where the drainage backs up after rain. You are not looking for the story the corridor is telling you right now. You are looking for all the stories it has been telling since the last time it rained." She felt Soren's scent reach the corridor end before she heard his footstep. She had been doing this since the first week, reading his approach before it arrived. Not because she was tracking him deliberately, but because her map had learned his pattern, and her nose had learned his scent, and she had stopped trying not to have that. She kept talking. The density of the bass note tells you the duration. The more settled the scent, the longer it has been there. You are building a timeline, not taking a single reading. She heard his footstep in the corridor behind her. She turned mid-explanation and reached out as he passed, her hand closing around his arm with both hands, the specific grip of the market hug, 3 seconds, deliberate, and released him and turned back to the guards without breaking the sentence. Which means you need to read the same surface multiple times at different angles before you... She heard him stop walking. She kept talking. Behind her, the Alpha King of Valemarch had stopped in the middle of the corridor with both his senior advisors, who had been in the middle of a briefing, and had completely lost his train of thought. She knew this because she could read it in his scent, the specific quality of a person who has just been thoroughly surprised by something they were not expecting and is now standing in a corridor with their composure in slight disarray and a warmth in their chest that was entirely visible to anyone reading carefully. She pressed her lips together. She kept teaching. Flynn appeared at the corridor's far end. He looked at his king. He looked at Wren's back. His expression said everything. His expression said, "I have been waiting for someone to do exactly that." When the lesson ended and the guards departed, Wren turned. Soren was still in the corridor. His advisors were gone. Flynn was gone. He was standing against the wall, in the position he used when he simply wanted to be somewhere, which she had been reading for 4 months and could identify from 50 feet. He looked at her. She said, "The eastern border assessment needs a route recalibration. I found 3 scent anomalies in the morning patrol data that suggest the standard path is running over old animal dens. The stability of the eastern pass is worse than the current maps indicate." "I know," he said. "You know. I reviewed the patrol data last night. I have already marked the alternate route." She looked at him. "You marked it without telling me." "I was going to tell you." "You were going to tell me after you had already decided." "Yes," he said, with the specific quality of someone who knows they are wrong about something and is not going to be defensive about it. "I was." She looked at her scent map, the section built around him, 4 months deep now with the specific density of something attended to with care. She thought about the library, organized by someone who found poorly designed systems professionally offensive. She thought about a commission that appeared fully formed. She thought about a training program she had not been consulted on. This is how he loves people. He sees the problem before they name it and solves it before they have to ask. He was doing it with the root. It was how he was built. She had filed it under his specific way of expressing care. She had read it in the first week. "Next time," she said, "show me the data first." "Yes. I want to see the anomalies myself before the route is changed. My reading of the trail density is more precise than the patrol reports. I know it is. That is why I want you to look at it. I was doing both things in the wrong order." "Yes," she said. He looked at her with those gold eyes, not searching, not managed, just him, warm and steady and present, still learning, with genuine effort, how to make decisions with someone rather than for them. She had been learning things too, how to occupy spaces rather than navigate them, how to let her map be information rather than armor, how to tell the difference between adequate and what it should be, and choose the latter without it feeling like a risk she might not survive. They were both still learning. She thought that was all right. "Show me the route," she said. He pushed off the wall and fell into step beside her, and his hand found hers without looking, the same way it always did. Automatic, certain, entirely without performance. She felt the warmth of it, and she did not file it. She just felt it. They walked down the corridor toward the map room, and she updated her scent map as she walked, the same way she always did, reading the castle's accumulated stories through its stone and air, and the section she kept for him was the most detailed and the most current and the most carefully rendered section of the entire map. She looked at the corridor ahead, east wing, 3 exits to the outer grounds, 2 unguarded at meal hours, guard rotation at the formal hall every 4 hours, and she noted all of it with the automatic professional attention that would never fully stop, because it was how she was built and who she was, and not a liability. She noted all of it, and she did not look for the nearest exit. She was already where she wanted to be.